Hi, everyone. Welcome to Metaphysical. Everyone loves a good story about Bigfoot, but did you know that there's basically a triangular paranormal zoo in southeastern Massachusetts that's home to not only Bigfoot, but also thunderbirds, enormous snakes and cats, hellhounds, monsters, and so much more? The encounters with these Bridgewater Triangle cryptids are strange. So we'll be talking about all of them, plus a little known North American creature called the pukwudgie. Join remote viewer John Vivanco and me, investigative researcher Rob Counts, for a show that's out of this world.
And please make sure wherever you're listening or watching this show to subscribe to us, leave us a 5-star rating, because the more you do this, the further we can expand.
Thank you, guys. John, how you doing?
Good. The pukwudgie.
This is the show we've been waiting for.
Heather, well, everybody knows Heather. She's, my partner in all this remote viewing business stuff, and she does a lot of really amazing work as a remote viewer, and on camera and everything. But anyway, she's going crazy about the pukwudgie. She really loves the pukwudgie. She wants to talk about the pukwudgie all the time.
That's
So
great.
I mean, I think it was that little pot belly thing,
Well, that is hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay, we have to get into the pukwudgies last. I hate to do that.
I know.
We
but,
have to, just because
pukwudgie.
there's so much data that John has that no one has on this.
Right. We're going to come full circle with the data. Like, you have to listen to the first episode. Okay. You've got to listen to the first episode of this, because we're going to come full circle with the data that goes right into the pukwudgie.
Yes. And, talking about cryptids, there's really, you can't really talk about cryptids unless you talk about the grandpappy of all cryptids, which is Bigfoot. And there have been tons of Bigfoot sightings around the Hockomock Swamp and the Freetown State Forest area. And these are sightings from all kinds of people. I mean, there are people that go out there that we've seen in a bunch of these documentaries and things that are actually taking footprints from their backyards. They see strange things found half eaten. You've got one encounter of Bigfoot seen eating a pumpkin in a crouching position. I mean, what is it? Why is Bigfoot drawn to this place, John? Or is just Bigfoot everywhere and they're just happening to see him in this area?
Bigfoot's everywhere, just in general. Like what we've seen, like
That's
Bigfoot, yeah, everywhere. Anywhere you find a forest big enough and with enough resources, there's going to be a Bigfoot. But on the other side of it, Bigfoot, so when I've said this before, but like when you get to the research organization type stuff around Bigfoot, they really want to go to the flesh and blood side. It's a lot like how people want to believe UFOs are nuts and bolts, right? There's always these two camps. No, UFOs are like paranormal type phenomena. They're not nuts and bolts, or it's not for people. It's got to be one way or the other way, and it's got to stay in its little box. But Bigfoot, what we see, what we find with remote viewing data, as well as tons of reports out there that don't get really looked at, is this huge paranormal aspect to it. And so I think that there are some that fully live here as flesh and blood creatures. But then I think there are some because they've decided to. Now, I don't necessarily believe that in the Bridgewater Triangle area, you're going to find a lot of the flesh and blood side. I think it goes more into one that's traversing dimensions. So the amount of big sightings that you have out there, I think that they are moving back and forth through that veil in that zone. And I think that's why you have a lot of the sightings there in that region. Now, like in the Pacific Northwest, when you get to like Washington State, for instance, and all the Bigfoot sightings there, I think a lot of those out there are like just living. They've like that is where they are. That is where they live. I don't know.
But how are they so elusive unless they have some ability to, like you kind of said, go back and forth? Now, if Bigfoot is real, right? Which personally, I think there's too many accounts for this thing to not be real. I mean, why are we avoiding taking into account the massive amount of of people that have come out and said that they've seen something they can't explain.
Well, I'm just assuming everybody out there that's listening to us believes Bigfoot's real. Like, I like where you're taking this. Like,
Well,
what? Are you going into skepticism?
I just think that there's a lot of people that are skeptical, and I'm trying to bring them into a world that they may not be completely comfortable with or
Right.
believe.
And you know why they're skeptical? Because they're sitting on their armchairs and they're watching people on TV tell them something about it instead of actually going out themselves to see. There's the big problem, right? People always place an authority figure in front to tell them what is and what isn't. I'm no authority figure, and I never want to be an authority figure. All I want to do is inspire people to do something different. But if a person, I mean, we got tons of armchair researchers out there, tons of armchair opinions out there. And most of those fall according to what the popular mindset is, right? It can't be real because we would have discovered it. Uh-huh. All right. Okay, sure. That's the end of story for that person.
I always love that argument when we're talking about the vastness of space.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, I never thought much about Bigfoot until I had weird things happen. And then I'm like, oh, something's going on here. Paying attention. There's something else out there. There's something going on out there. And then that's on the physical side. And then on the remote viewing side, when we start to look at these incidences where people have captured something on camera that everybody in the world argues, no, that can't be real because number one, we haven't discovered it. We've discovered everything. I hope you know, like literally we have discovered everything and there's no room for anything else left. That's the predominant attitude of people. And you know what? If it's out there, the scientists, well, they're going to tell us. That's all there is to it.
It is a bizarre world we live in.
It's a bizarre world, man. It's ridiculous. So what we've remote viewed around Bigfoot has been a flesh and blood creature. Yes, we've seen some where it's literally a person dressed up in a suit or CG, like computer graphic. Literally, like we've seen that in data, but then we've seen some that are, oh, this is a big, huge, massive flesh and blood creature. Absolutely. Then we've seen some that it is a big, huge, massive flesh and blood creature who has this ability to sense and seek out those thin veiled zones so it can slip into another world, another dimension in order to hide.
Yeah, so. I think I think it's strange that people are so averse to something new. It's like humans are just set up to reject anything that
science hasn't told them it's there.
But historically too. I mean, because I do believe science is the new religion to some extent. I mean, look how the people attack you when you come out with an idea or when you challenge ideas that are already that are already kind of set, but that are also theories. They'll use the argument that, oh, this is just a theory, and then turn around and criticize you for challenging the theory. It doesn't make sense. It's a gigantic contradiction. I think science will largely be seen as a religion in the future that is going to get challenged more and more personally because it's just gone so far to an extreme.
It's gotten dogmatic. Yeah. I mean, scientific process is one thing. That's one thing.
Yeah.
But the dogmatic side really has taken over a lot of this stuff. It's very strange. I don't know. That's not a real picture of Bigfoot.
It should be though, but it's not. There's a picture that Lindsay brought up of it. Looks like Bigfoot in one of these old Godzilla movies.
I like the pictures of the $6 million man fighting Bigfoot.
That is probably the best GIF out there, actually. Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, well, you guys, there is also probably one of the crazier Bigfoot encounters that I've heard coming out of the Bridgewater Triangle, and that is from a cop who was sitting in his car, and he basically felt the back of his car lift up entirely. So the back of his cruiser is being lifted up while he's sitting inside of it. He looks back, and there is a gigantic beast lifting the entire end of his car up and then releases it. Now, you know, the more you research all of this and you look into it, the cop never came forward himself, but there are people, because everyone knows everyone in that area. There are people that know the police officer. The daughter, I think, of the police officer actually came forward and said that that's completely legit, that this happened.
There are other stories like this. I mean, not just in that area. There are stories down in Florida that I've heard where
Skunk
Bigfoot's
apes.
done the same thing. Yeah, skunk apes where they've attacked police officers, police cars. Like crazy stories.
Because of the lights?
You know, it just really depends. Like they can be territorial, very, very territorial. And if they get agitated, then territorial agitation, you're set up for trouble. It's like the Dyatlov Pass incident. You know, like we had remote viewed the Dyatlov Pass incident, which is that thing that happened in Russia. I can't remember the year, 1950s, 60s, something like that, where the group of hikers mysteriously disappeared. They didn't show up where they were supposed to show up at a certain date. So they went and found them basically killed and stuffed in the snow.
John has a episode on the Dyatlov Pass on rise.tv that will blow y'all's minds. And this is a mystery that goes back so many years. And he takes you through all of the evidence and then tells you what happened in the remote viewing. I highly recommend you go check that out.
Yeah,
great
check
episode.
It out. It's a good one.
Chronicles of a Psychic Spy on rise.tv. So yeah, I mean,
so it's like we see that like Bigfoot will get mad. Don't make Bigfoot mad.
Yeah, or a Yeti. I find like it's like with bears or anything, like anything that's living in the wild in snow is generally seemingly more wild than things that are not. They're more wild and more dangerous. Like look at a polar bear. I mean, the last thing you want to come across on the planet really is a polar bear. They don't care. They'll Star Wars you. Was the opening of what was that? Return of the Jedi, where Luke's like in the snow and he has to fight off one of those crazy snow monster things.
Right. What it's so like as far as bears go, I think if it's black, fight back. If it's brown, lay down. If it's white, good night.
Yeah, that's it. Oh man, that's a great saying. And 100% true, according to research. I mean, yeah, they're vicious. They're just vicious.
Yeah, they are.
So yeah, I mean, there's multiple different sightings, not just one, all in that area. Now, just to move things along here, it's not just Bigfoot that people are seeing in this area. We're seeing strange, gigantic hellhounds as well with red eyes. So hellhounds have been seen there. That's kind of what they're calling them. Some call them.
I mean, isn't that a dogman?
Yeah, it is. But there's so many different names. Like, isn't Dogman a werewolf? I mean, you know, like.
Well, a werewolf technically is a person that's changing into a wolf during the full moon or whatever, right? And then, you know.
No. I mean. Right? I don't know if it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck, it's probably a duck, right?
I don't know what these things are. We view them and they're like real. They're real. There was this one thing that I was reading about, I heard this one story about a dog man there, and it's like, all right, so here, let me just place it this way. Have you, like, when I was a kid, the biggest issue I thought I was going to be dealing with when I grew up was quicksand. Like, I thought that, like, when I was a kid, you know, I'm going to have to, like, be getting out of quicksand later on in life. So I better practice it, right? You know, I mean, didn't you think that? It's like all the dang cartoons about quicksand.
Yes.
So
they're terrifying.
So it's like this one guy saw a dog man in quicksand in the Hockonock Swamp.
Swamp?
Yeah, in the Hockonock Swamp. So
it's like Hockomock, I think.
Hockomock Swamp. So there was this one area, I was reading this one story where there's like one area where the power lines cut through, and you could see this area on maps.
Yeah, they call them the big T's over there. It's like
they call them the big T. That's so northeast.
It is, but there's something there's something that
It's the big T's.
but it begins. There's something that begins with T that's related to those. Yeah. Anyway, go on.
I see. So I was like, so this guy, he worked on the electrical stations there, and he had a dogman experience before, and he worked for the electrical company, and he was sent out to check on something under the big T's and in the swamp area. And so he had told his buddies about the sighting that he had before. And so when he got out there, he kind of had a feeling they were going to try to haze him. So he's out there, he's working on something in the swamp with these big power structures. And there was this thing that was in the forest that looked like a big dog. And he thought it was like a buddy in a costume, like, because he thought he was getting hazed by his friends. Right. So this thing falls into quicksand, and it's struggling in quicksand. He's like, oh shoot. So he goes over there. He's like, thinks it's his friend dressed up as a suit or something. He's like, come on, grab my hand. I'll get you out. I'll get you out. And the thing's just starting to try and bite him. Like, bite him. He's like, whoa, wait, this is not my friends playing a joke on me. This is like some weird creature stuck in the quicksand.
That's a crazy encounter.
That's a crazy encounter. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely crazy.
And the fact that there was quicksand in the Hockomock Swamp, what's not there?
That's so true. I mean, that is I didn't even know there was a meme around this thing. Like, this is so funny.
Because what you just said is a common thought of many people. Because of
is that true? I did not know that. Yeah.
No, dude, how many movies had something to do with quicksand when we were young? Like, it was a thing.
Like I literally thought that's what was gonna be a problem.
Princess Bride, great example. I watched that movie so much when I was a kid. You know, you've got Wesley here, Dread Pirate Roberts, who's pulling he and his princess out of the sand, right? I mean, we watched that so many times, and it was like a terrifying idea, because how do you get out of quicksand? You don't.
How much, like, when you're a kid, when in your playtimes, you spend hours. I would spend hours every day practicing how to get out of quicksand. But we're like playing games, like everything
in the fort that you built.
In the fort, yeah, in the fort. Everything you do as a kid is training for when you get older. You know, it's like, quicksand.
Yeah,
that's too funny.
Yeah, so then there were other things like, you know, in addition to the dog man, there were also these like ape-like orangutan looking things.
Oh, that's like the Bennington monster, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, they've got, I don't know. It looks like they're not Bigfoot, but they look like these orange-haired, strange creatures and more than one of them that people have encountered seeing over there.
Well, that's one of the predominant things that shows up in the Bennington Triangle. The big orangutan orange thing that people see over there. I bet it's the same.
Yeah, so the Bennington Triangle is in Vermont, if you guys didn't know, and John and I are probably going to swing over there and check that out before we get over to the Bridgewater Triangle at some point when we start going on expeditions on the show. Lots of weird stuff going on in Bennington, and lots of strange stories coming out of that area that John and I have listened to. And yeah, so, you know, there was one story of the excuse me, of the dog man. Someone had some ponies. They walk outside, and there is a strange creature as large as the ponies tearing their throats out with its jaws. And this creature that looks like a wolf/dog something or other, you know, had killed the ponies with its teeth. I mean, pulled the throats right out of the ponies. You know, why make a story up like that when you've got?
Is this a hellhound or a dog man? I mean, what's the difference? A hellhound is not a dog man, huh?
I just don't know. I mean, it's like a gigantic dog, but a lot of the dog man encounters that we've listened to have been massive looking dogs. You know, I don't know. Seem to be different classifications or different accounts of different beings. Maybe there's just so many beings out there of different types in these forests that we're not aware of, that, you know, people are kind of starting to categorize them together. Some of these dogman encounters sound like Bigfoot, but they're not either.
Right. Well, I think that these are the ones that are getting seen, that are having an impact on human human life. I think that there are others that would probably be even more mind-boggling to people. The
I bet.
ones that stay even more hidden, that don't impact humans. I mean, I think you're going to find things that are from the lens of complete, utter, total mythology. Um, Things that people couldn't even conceive of, because that's what you find when you get into these areas. Because I do think that, like, stuff from mythology, from what we consider mythology, was not necessarily all, it was not mythology. It was just because two worlds were mixing more.
Right.
And I think, like, right there, you have a microcosm of it.
Yeah. Yeah, you really do.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's just bizarre. I mean, I wonder, the story of the Bridgewater Triangle has made me really desire to go out there and talk more to local people in different areas to see what's going on, because we're
Right.
not getting the whole story. They're just telling it over there. But what's like, I really want to go down to Louisiana and start talking to people and see what's happening. There's so much bizarre leads happening in Louisiana.
Right.
I mean, they've developed zombie powder down there, you know? You
What
heard
are
about all
talking
that?
about? They developed zombie powder down
Like some of these shamans down, apparently this
Oh,
stuff
right,
is coming in
right.
from Africa, where they're
Shamans.
reanimating, you know, like dead things
Right.
with this
I
zombie
get it.
powder.
Yeah. That's too funny. The zombie powder. I don't know. I mean, yeah, when you get to Louisiana, like, things get pretty crazy. A lot of the really weird dogman stories come out of that
Well,
area.
and the apparently the largest community of vampires in the States or something. Like, if you start really trying to dig into vampires, where to find vampires, you
In Louisiana?
get to Louisiana. You end up getting to Louisiana, and you know what's weird is, like, that series True Blood was about vampires, was all based in Louisiana.
Huh. That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know about that. Huh. So, vampires. Okay, so we haven't looked into vampires. Huh.
Well, kind of, because I've asked you to look into
Oh, no, that's right.
Vlad
Okay,
the
no,
Impaler for me before.
okay, no, you're right.
I
Okay.
was like, I need to know more about this
We
guy.
looked into Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah.
And then we looked into the woman. Who was the woman?
Oh, Elizabeth Bathory.
Elizabeth Bathory.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's like the most prolific serial killer of all time.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I remember that. I get it.
That we are aware of, anyway.
Right. Well, I was thinking more like the conventional vampire with the teeth. Like, Dogman seems to be the conventional werewolf type thing, which is very strange. Here's the thing with Dogman that I don't quite get. I have been really interested in cryptids and all that stuff for a long time. But I had never heard of Dogman until I was really, really deep into it. But I should have heard of Dogman.
You have, though.
Early on.
You have heard of Dogman, because Dogman has been explained as a werewolf for centuries.
So you think that that's what that is? Dogman's the werewolf.
80,000 people in Europe were killed for either being witches or werewolves, like, much before the Salem witch trials. 80,000 people were put to death. People were seeing things they couldn't explain and going crazy.
Well, I think that's when the world's mixed more.
Maybe. But that creature was definitely seen down there. I mean,
okay.
Europe.
So you're thinking it's where? Okay, got it.
I mean, okay, look. I think, again, there's probably, from my research, there's multiple classifications of things that could go on. I mean, there were Norse soldiers that were getting possessed by wolves and running into war.
Yeah,
these
exactly.
guys, now they would take on the spirit of a wolf, and you'd shoot an arrow at them, and they could move or catch it.
Right.
It was like something was, you know, they were berserkers. These guys.
Right.
Now, that is like one example of something that's acting more like an animal and taking on those characteristics. But that's just That's just like the Diet Coke version of that.
Right.
You know, where you've got people in Europe who are getting cursed. There's amulets involved in some of these cases, and they're able to turn into that thing. There's human beings turning into that thing, and then there could be humans that have turned into that thing because of a curse or something that's gone on, and they're existing in that state entirely. We don't know. And I know for some of you out there, this conversation might be getting super bizarre. I'm talking about when you're researching this stuff on a whole, what you come across. If you're like looking at all of the information up in front of you, right? So when I was researching werewolves, there were people that were just psychotic, that lost their mind. And okay, now this is from what we're looking at on screen right now is actually from Bram Stoker's Dracula. This is Dracula as like a bat or something, part bat, part man, a beast, which was described in Bram Stoker's Dracula generally. Right. Okay. You know, and so anyway, we've got accounts all over the world of either animals becoming bipedal and having more energy and turning more human-like in China, where there are were-foxes, were-snakes, just different things like that. And then in Europe, more likely to like be werewolves. I mean, there have been some accounts of were-hyenas. You could call them a dog man too, really.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, the hyenas, dude, I mean, if you ever watch videos on hyenas, that'd be the last thing I'd want to come across is a hyena anywhere. They're just like the most evil, just terrible creatures. They're just really sneaky. So yeah, I mean, what are these things? I think there's so many of them. We're just trying to find an easy way to classify them when we have a sighting, you know?
Right. I mean, that's the dogman thing is super duper messed up and crazy from a remote viewing perspective. In fact, we stopped remote viewing dogman because we were looking at it in a couple different incidences just to in order to figure out if it was real or not. And yes, real, but it's different than Bigfoot, like remote viewing Bigfoot. Like when you remote view dogman, or even if you put a lot of thought into dogman picks it up, and it's like a dog that's sniffing something out after that point. And that's such
like a paranormal track on you or something.
Yeah, it's like it wants to track you, it wants to find you, and so we don't remote view dogman anymore because of that. And it also follows like there are certain people who have had repeated dogman experiences throughout their lives, even when they move to a different area. You know, and I know some of these
having weird encounters,
and they keep having these weird encounters, and these are people that haven't told anybody about it, but they've told me, and so they're not out for like just making stuff up. And so this is one of the weird common things about dogman. You got to like really, really be careful when you begin to investigate those guys, unless you're up for the whatever. Who knows what it's going to do?
Oh, man,
I mean, some of these cases of people disappearing are definitely related to dogman.
There's a couple of other things I need to get through, which is that in the, I think it was the 70s it was earlier than that. Like in that area, there were accounts of giant snakes with bodies as thick as tree trunks, basically. And also one of the stranger things is like this account of thunderbirds from the Bridgewater Triangle area. So Norton Police Chief Thomas Downey was driving to his home in Easton, and he's following his shift, basically, right? So it's on a late summer night in 1971 when he spots a gigantic bird in the area. Ironically, that area is known as Bird Hill, if you can believe that. How cliche is that? That's crazy. So just at the edge of the Hockomock Swamp is where this area is. Downey claimed the creature saw him and shot straight up into the sky, but not before he observed it stood over 6 feet tall with a wingspan of 8 to 12 feet. Many think Downey saw something similar to the legendary Mothman, potentially. They don't know. Native Americans in Massachusetts, though, have had a long legend of the Thunderbird, man-sized birds believed to possess supernatural abilities.
Yeah, those are that legend is all over the place. As for coming from native tribes, they'll do pictographs of it. So yeah, that comes from all over the place. Sometimes the whole Thunderbird thing does get mixed up with pterodactyl.
Yeah, dinosaur
You
accounts or
dinosaur
something.
accounts. Yeah. So it's like it's weird. There's this one area in Washington that I've been investigating for pterodactyl sightings, where
In
over the
Washington State.
in Washington State, yeah. And I have talked to some people who claim they have seen the pterodactyls, and I actually have the coordinates of an exact location where there's a claim that pterodactyls during a certain time of the year fly into a river to catch fish and do this over and over again throughout the night. Not all the time, but on occasion. And these pterodactyls have these would be like the ropin, which is a pterodactyl, and they have glowing. Well, they have like these like phosphorescent, like glowing green spots, like 2 spots on them, so you can see them flying around. And I keep meaning to get out there once things warm up.
I'm coming over, and we're going out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, like, to investigate whether we've remote viewed it, and like the witness stories on some of these stuff with the pterodactyls, and I do think it's a crossover with the Thunderbird, and we do see that that people are telling the truth
about seeing something,
right. Something. Unless a remote viewer straight up says it's a dinosaur. And even that's a deduction, but it would be a pretty solid deduction, because a person getting a flying thing is more often going to claim it's a bird in remote
like an eagle
data.
or something, right?
Yeah,
a hawk,
right,
an eagle,
right.
A giant hawk, a giant eagle, whatever.
Right. So like if we remote view that kind of stuff, it's a tricky thing, because remote viewers get low-level information. They don't come to conclusions about things. If a remote viewer, though, came to the conclusion that it was a dinosaur, which has happened before in these sessions, then I would believe it, because they normally wouldn't do that. So that's why I say yes. Like, some of the stuff truly is a dinosaur.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, it's time. We have to have a lengthy conversation about these pukwudgies. Otherwise, Heather is never going to let us forget. So now the pukwudgies, John, why don't you tell us a little bit about it? We've got a story here from William Russo that was also in the documentary, but there is lore around these things. What are these things? Weird name.
Right. What are these things? I mean, okay, so the pukwudgie is a mythical type of creature that many native peoples interacted with from the East Coast to the West Coast. They would call them different things. But apparently this creature, basically maybe like 3 to 4 feet tall. Some describe him as having like spikes on its back, like a porcupine.
Mm-hmm.
It typically has a pot belly, and it would look a lot like the leprechaun coming out of Ireland. So a pukwudgie is also called a little person. But I do think that within lore of Native Americans, there are different types of little people, but the pukwudgie is one of them. Now, when you get over to the tribes on the East Coast, the Wampanoag tribe, the pukwudgie is supposedly somewhat of an enemy, can be very trickster-like. Mischievous, lead you to your own death, harass you, kill you even. Personally kill you. So
according to one of the accounts I heard about what they are, at least, that they, over time, the Native Americans just started blaming the pukwudgie for anything that went wrong.
Anything. It's like the gremlin. It's like the story of a gremlin. So with that particular tribe that inhabited that area, I think it's a fascinating story with the Moshop, the giant. So the native peoples were
Is it really? Did you say Moshoop?
Moshoop.
Yeah.
Moshup, I think. Moshup. So Moshup was a giant and had a lot of power, and the native peoples revered this giant. And the pukwudgies got jealous and started to attack the natives, became enemies of the native peoples, and then the pukwudgies basically got picked up by Moshup and just tossed all over the United States, I guess, North America, right? Tossed all over the place. And from then on, the pukwudgie have had a very bad relationship with the native peoples. So, but, you know, when you get to other areas, there is no bad relationship. Native peoples don't have a bad relationship. So it's kind of interesting that the variation in this story, even, you know, on the West Coast of the US is like the little people, the stories of the little people, which is really interesting. Really, really interesting. You know, you go into the forest, you go off trail, you can see little footprints. You got to be careful. These guys have little spears and little knives and little bows and arrows too. So I've heard.
What's that? Was it in the Willow? Those little guys.
Yeah.
In Willow.
Yeah. Like it's interesting too, because like in the first episode, I was talking about Lucy Thompson, and the native woman from the Mount Shasta area who wrote the book of her history. And when one area where in the book, she said they crossed the land bridge. There were giants here. There were also a tribe of little people, short statured people that they called the Wagas. I don't know if they're pukwudgie or not. Okay. So I don't know if they're pukwudgie, but she described these beings as being very tight with the natives after they came over, and they would help them understand like what plants to eat, where to hunt, etc. And so much so that the tribes became very close. At a certain point, what happened was, this is according to her book, the Waga said, it's time for us to go. We have to leave and we have to go home. And so the Wagas set up these stone monuments for the native peoples to wait at, because at a certain point in the future, they would come back through them. Okay, so they could be pukwudgies. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But now the deal here is that the data from, you know, all of the stuff around Bridgewater Triangle is a little bit like this, where the pukwudgie come in and out, in and out. They normally exist in another dimension. And like the story with Lucy Thompson, these beings were going back to their home dimension. That's where they were going because they knew how to cross over, right? It's the same with the pukwudgies. In fact, the data on the pukwudgie that we have relates to them hiding specifically in that area. Like they live in that area when they come out to be physical.
In the Hockomock Swamp or in the Freetown State?
In the Hockomock Swamp, specifically. Like in our data, when you go back to the first episode and I'm talking about the area with the caves and the tunnels between the caves.
Yes.
There are literally in that zone, there's a huge transition zone, and a lot of the transition zone can occur underground. And the pukwudgie go in and out of that area. That's what our data was saying. And they're literally, like the viewers were describing tribes of them that are prehistoric. Like they're beyond time. They're literally beyond time, and they're prehistoric, and they're coming in and out of these underground caverns in the Hockomock Swamp area.
But why come back to a place that's so populated like this?
Over there, I mean, not necessarily, not so much. You know, they're also considered shapeshifters, you know, where they can turn into balls of light, just like Bigfoot. Bigfoot, same thing. Bigfoot can put its consciousness into a ball of light, just like the pukwudgie can. They all come from the Fae realm. They all come from the same realm. And like Lucy Thompson's story with the Wagas, they went back to the Fae realm, most likely, or a realm very closely associated with that. You hear these stories all the time when you really dig in.
What's their goal? Like, okay, so I have a few questions here. So first of all, we need to go over this account from William Russo in 1990, because it's probably the best account of pukwudgie that we have, actually.
Exactly.
It happened in Massachusetts. So William Russo, 1990, he'd always walk his dog in Raynham after he got off of work at around midnight. So that night he took a different route from usual, going through these tall trees that we were calling the tall T's. Remember the big T's or whatever, where all the
Big
electrical,
T's.
the electrical, lines go. And he's cutting through to a street. And as he approached the road, he sees, his 90-pound dog. It's not a small dog. It was shaking like a leaf. So there in the center of the street light, casting a 10-foot circle in the road, was this hairy creature, 3 to 4 feet tall. It had a pot belly, just as described. Okay, so it's 3 to 4 feet tall. It's got a pot belly. It's kind of naked. Its face is like a chipmunk. And it's saying this like Ewan Chu thing. It's like Ewan Chu, Kia, like this thing. He kind of recounts this. And it's sort of over time like beckoning to come closer, which probably wasn't a good idea. I mean, honestly, if these things are actually leading people to their death, we don't know. Anyway, he didn't have the courage to really go, but he turned away. He went home. He stayed up all night wondering what the heck just happened. And later on in his life, much later, he kind of put a blog out about this, and this is how the director of Bridgewater Triangle found him.
Right. So the pukwudgie was speaking English, and it is thought that because it kept saying
here. We want you here.
Here. Yeah,
come here,
we want you.
Here.
Yeah, come here. And so it's thought that the pukwudgie used to have better language capability. They could speak somehow, used to be able to speak with the native peoples. But I guess this pukwudgie learned English, trying to speak English, which is really, really fascinating. And, in the data, it's like what these beings are doing is that they're choosing to live in both worlds, to go back and forth, because there's going to be different things. It's like fairies. It's like gnomes. It's like leprechauns. Like they will sometimes be here. They will sometimes exist in our realm, doing things, whatever they're doing, collecting things, and then going back to their realm. And I think that a lot of them will spend a heck of a lot of time here and then go back to theirs if there's any trouble, just in general. So
it's like their home has always been in the Bridgewater. I mean, why don't we see? It's just we're not.
That's their home. That's literally their home. It's like when we tasked on like what's behind the phenomena in the Bridgewater Triangle, we get all of the the normal things that we see in highly energetic geological situations, areas, but then inexplicably in the data, we have pukwudgies that are literally like in the whole area. Like there is pukwudgie activity there like mad, according to our data. They live there. They use that zone to go in and out of. That's their home. That's what they do. And that was just very strange to me. I mean, I was not expecting that in the data. Not at all. Not even close.
Yeah. And how are they avoid being seen? Is it like you said, they're shape shifting into something else, or
it's
they
like
just don't want to be seen?
You don't always see fairies. Sometimes you'll see a fairy, but these things will disappear. Somehow, some way, they just
why
disappear.
Not interact with humans? Because we're crazy and we'll kill them and eat them or something?
Yeah. In the data, it specifically said humans are not ready to see me.
Really?
Yeah. People aren't ready. Look, they want to go shoot Bigfoot for proof. Come on.
Yeah. Okay.
Let the being be what it is. Be friends with it. Like that's where you have to start, not shoot it for proof. Because you know what? We're the smartest animal there is, and nothing else, can get around us. And if there's something out there, we got to shoot it and kill it in order to get proof. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to live like that. I would hide from humans too, right?
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
You can't even be a lion in Africa without people going over there and hunting you for no reason.
Exactly.
Zero reason. It's not like you're eating them. It's just for the sport, right?
Right.
So yeah, it's that's crazy, and it seems more probable that they would hide than they would allow themselves to be seen or have any kind of relationship, especially in today's world, right? If those things are real, why would you ever humans believe in so little anything new, it's just like kill.
Right. Kill.
That's the reaction. Look, like science, all science does is kill to get its evidence of what to do.
Right.
It doesn't know how to do anything else. It's like, oh, we need to try this new medicine. Let's kill all of these mice and experiment on all of them. Why isn't anyone calling it out? It's the most bizarre thing. It's like this like science is based around killing. The entire thing is about killing to find evidence. It's like even with CERN, we were talking about CERN a couple of weeks ago or whatever. CERN is like, oh, let's bash these particles together and destroy them to see what other particles are around there, and we can get this evidence. You know, the atomic bomb, let's split this atom and destroy it in order to get this gigantic amount of energy. You don't know what's happening there.
Right.
Not really. But it's all like kill, destroy, everything. It's weird, right?
It is weird.
Yeah. I mean, how do you, I just wonder, you know, maybe there's these ancient civilizations where their science wasn't based off of destruction, but ours very much is. So when people often ask, well, if this was true, why wouldn't more people see it? You know,
right.
If any
Where's
being,
the evidence of it?
Yeah. If any being has half of a brain, they're going
Which
to know
they
to stay away
do.
from humans.
They have high intelligence. They all have high intelligence. They're not stupid. They all have language capability. They all understand what humans are and what humans do. And we are not ready for them. I mean, shockingly, the pukwudgie thing is something that is literally described across every session that we looked at on that swamp.
No, let me ask you a question. Are they sentient and benevolent, or are they tricksters?
Or both. It depends on it depends on who you come across. See, sometimes fairies, for instance, can be considered tricksters, or they can be very kind. Sometimes leprechauns can be. It's that realm. There's something about that realm that they're all coming from, that they can be very playful and trickster-like, as well as kind and friendly. And so I think it really depends on, well, probably number one, how you approach these beings. Number two, it's going to be their own general attitude about humans. So
or whether they've gotten burned ever, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, in the data, we didn't see anything about them being trickster-like. We just basically got data around humans just aren't ready for this kind of thing. Not ready at all. And they're not. Unfortunately, it's sad.
Yeah, it is. It's sad, but it is what it is. I mean, it's like they're smart to protect themselves. At the same time, must be difficult having a home like Hockomock Swamp and then having to avoid humans as much as they do, if they're there, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Crazy. So what do these things look like? Is it like that drawing that we keep seeing of the Ewan Chu guy? You know, like,
yeah, it's okay. So it seemed more like that. Like in the data, there was nothing about spikes on the back, porcupine looking, but they are called shapeshifters, right? They apparently can. People say they can't shift their shape. Yes, it looked more like that. It looked like almost like a mini Bigfoot.
I was gonna say mini Bigfoot.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like what this guy described it as.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little excited here. In Australia, they have a cryptid that we don't necessarily have here, or maybe it is this. It's called a yowie. It's like a little mini Bigfoot. Is this the same thing as a yowie, or is that different?
No, it's different. It's different than a yowie. Yeah, the yowie is sort of like a Bigfoot that's probably not getting enough food.
Nutrition.
Not enough nutrition. No, I shouldn't say that. I'm going to get it from the Australians.
Because they're in the Australian outback and they refuse to eat kangaroo.
No, the yowie's just like a different, different. No, it's a Bigfoot, but it just has a genetic variation for the region. Yeah, specifically for that region. But no, yowie can be really, really big too. Like as big as the Bigfoot we have here. Typically, they're probably a little bit smaller.
Look at that photo. Is that
crazy.
From Australia? Where is this photo taken, Lindsay? That's one of the clearer images of Bigfoot I've ever seen, if that's real.
Yeah.
This is Australia, reportedly, allegedly, unless it's a guy in a suit. Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, it's real unless, of course, it's real unless there's a guy in a suit. Thanks, Rob. That was the most intelligent thing that you've said all show. Lindsay set me up for that one. All right. Yeah. So very weird. So these pukwudgie guys are in ancient Native American lore. You guys at home can go look into this stuff. They were convinced that these things were real. John and his team of remote viewers have confirmed that these things are entering, that the Hockomock Swamp is their home. But what do you guys think? Please definitely leave us a note in the comments below. Tell us your stories. If you have stories in your area of things that have happened, we want to know. We want to go visit this area eventually on this show, and we want to research the things that no one's willing to research. So please do comment below. And yeah, John, is there anything else that you wanted to explain to us about the pukwudgie before we wrap up this episode?
Well, I mean, just everybody out there, Rob and I are going to go on a sticker run and create stickers that say, love the pukwudgie. So go to our website. I'm just kidding.
It's going to say pukwudgie or get a pukwudgie.
Exactly. Yeah. Pukwudgie.
Well, you guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us. This was a 4-part episode of the Bridgewater Triangle. We didn't even hit everything. There is more that goes back even further, but y'all can research that yourself. And I think we've shed some light on some things that other shows have not been able to shed light on. And I hope that you found this interesting and educational about this area of the Northeast that I grew up in and that I love. John, thanks so much for being with us and telling us everything that you found. It's crazy, fascinating stuff. It's weird. I can't wait to go research some of this stuff with you. All right, you guys. Well, that'll wrap it up. And we hope you thought this episode of Metaphysical was as out of this world as we did. And we'll see you next time.